Tonight, we climb aboard an 18th century pirate ship. Not to steal treasure, but to admire the surprisingly elegant way these sea scoundrels styled their personal space. You step into the dim wooden corridor, ducking a low beam, and the salty tang of the sea fills your nostrils. Candles flicker behind a door with an ornate, if slightly waterlogged carving of Poseidon wrestling a squid. You push it open, and there it is, the captain's cabin. And it's beautiful. Not just salvaged from wreckage, beautiful. Genuinely, bizarrely, tastefully beautiful. A velvet curtain sways gently over a porthole, catching the glow of moonlight on its faded crimson threads. There's a scent of beeswax, wet rope, and something citrusy. Lemons, maybe. And there's music playing, faintly, from somewhere below deck. You take a step forward, and the ship lurches just slightly under your feet. The floorboards creak, but feel sturdy, warm, even welcoming. You didn't expect taste. You expected rot. But here's a room that looks like the love child of a naval warship and a very confused French salon. A massive oak desk sits dead center, carved with curling waves, gulls, and mermaids with frankly implausible anatomy. It's covered in navigational tools. Brass sextants, a broken compass, half a lime, and a feather quill whose ink pot is, suspiciously, just an empty rum bottle. One of the walls is covered in fabric. Yes, actual draped fabric, richly dyed in stripes of gold and indigo, like something from a Moroccan marketplace. And you suddenly realize, this isn't some happy accident. This is curated, intentional. This is pirate chic. Of course, you probably won't survive this. You're standing in the cabin of a man who once stabbed a fellow captain for snoring too loudly. But sure, admire the thread count. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You ease into a creaky, cushioned chair in the corner, hands resting on armrests, so worn they've grown silky smooth. A lantern sways from a hook above, casting a slow dance of shadows across the low ceiling beams. Each plank overhead is etched with little marks, tallies, initials, maybe spells. And just behind you, something rustles. You turn slowly, half expecting a rat or a jewel. But it's just a curtain shifting in the breeze. Historians still argue whether pirate captains truly lived better than the rest of the crew, or if this cabin comfort was mostly theatre. Just another performance in a world where reputation was armor. But standing here, it's hard not to think the perks were real. While most of the crew fought for a dry hammock, the captain got his own mattress. Sometimes stuffed with feathers, sometimes with hay. Once, allegedly, with shredded pages from a stolen Bible. Soft, if slightly cursed. The taste? It wasn't random. Pirates were magpies of the sea. They took not just gold and spices, but culture. Patterns from Persia, colors from China, silver forks from some noble's picnic basket. One captain, Bartholomew Roberts, reportedly had velvet curtains and a French chef. Of course, the chef was a hostage. But hey, gourmet is gourmet. That's the funny thing about pirate decor. It's less about what you buy and more about what you steal. And when you steal from every corner of the world, you get a style that's global. Patchwork, a bit stolen Versailles, a bit mariner's grunge. You reach out and run your hand along the edge of the bunk. A sturdy wooden platform built right into the wall. It's been painted over many times, but the latest layer is a deep forest green. There's a candle stub on a tiny built-in shelf, next to a tin cup and a book with no cover. You crack it open and find shaky handwriting in multiple languages. Some of it looks like love poetry. Some of it, shopping lists. Then there's the ceiling, low and ribbed with beams, yes, but also painted with stars. Not beautifully, not even symmetrically, but the stars are there, speckled in white and gold. A sky for when storms hide the real one. And in the corner of the room, a small wooden box, intricately carved. Inside, something wrapped in cloth. You unwrap it slowly, expecting treasure. It's a teacup, cracked. Porcelain, clearly from China. Definitely stolen, possibly loved. And as you sip imaginary tea in a rocking pirate cabin, the ship groans slightly. Something bumps against the hull. Maybe a wave, maybe a sea creature, maybe just a floating cask of brandy lost from its last unlucky transport. Outside, thunder rolls. Inside, candlelight flickers. You lean back in your chair, breathing in salt, spice, and slow decay. This place is alive, not just with ghosts and rumors, but with style, with personality, with the strange, specific tastes of a man who stares death in the face and thinks, needs more velvet. You shift your weight slightly on the cushioned chair, feeling the subtle dip where hundreds of weary pirate backs must have leaned before yours. It groans under you, but holds. Across the cabin, a gust of sea air pushes open a second curtain. And there it is. A rug. No, not just any rug. This one's got gold thread, real gold. You'd bet your last doubloon. It stretches across the creaky floorboards like a throne room runner, clashing boldly with the practical rough-hewn walls. The pattern is intricate. Floral vines coiling around abstract stars. You recognize it from somewhere. Persia, probably. Maybe India. You try to guess how many sailors died transporting it before it got shoved under the boots of some half-drunk captain with a flair for interior design. Pirates didn't commission rugs. They commandeered them. Merchant ships, especially those plying routes between Asia and Europe, often carried luxury items bound for noble homes. But when a pirate crew swarmed aboard, it wasn't just gold they went for. They took silks, spices, mirrors, cushions, even the captain's slippers. If it glittered, smelled nice, or felt good to the touch, it was fair game. The velvet drapes flutter again, rich burgundy with gold tassels. Faded, yes, but unmistakably regal. You imagine some Dutch merchant's wife mourning their loss, while this cabin miles away glows softly under their borrowed splendor. One popular myth claims that pirate ships were so covered in luxury fabrics they resembled floating opera houses. That's likely an exaggeration, but not entirely false. Several written accounts from the Royal Navy mention being shocked by the condition of pirate quarters, more boudoir than battlefield. And yet, it's not all wealth for wealth's sake. Some of it's insulation. Thick fabrics keep out sea spray, cut down on drafts, and muffle the constant creaks and groans of the ship itself. Even pirates needed sleep. Even pirates, apparently, liked a cozy corner. You walk across the rug, barefoot, of course. You're a pirate now, remember? It feels strange. Software. Still warm in places, like it's been baking in sunlight for years and never cooled off. You bend down, run your fingers through the weave. There's grit in it, salt crystals, bits of tobacco, maybe even powdered gun residue. A fancy rug living a hard life. Historians still argue whether this was decadence or practicality. Was the velvet just looted fashion, or a deliberate way to build morale? Some scholars believe captains used decor as performance. reminding their crews they were no longer starving Navy sailors, but free men with flair. Others suggest it was just narcissism. Who wouldn't want to sleep surrounded by stolen luxury if they could? You step closer to the bunk now, tracing your hand along another length of fabric. This one draped like a canopy. It's patchy, clearly stitched together from at least 3 different textiles. One part looks like a tablecloth, another maybe part of a priest's robe. The third is embroidered with flowers and some very suggestive butterflies. Quirky detail time. Some pirates reportedly hung curtains inside their cabins, soaked in citrus oil or vinegar to ward off lice. Effective? Debatable. But fragrant, absolutely. And if nothing else, it masked the smell of seawater, sweat, and questionable decision-making. There's a small wooden chest nearby, half tucked under the bunk. You pull it out with a grunt. It's heavier than it looks. Inside, you find more fabrics, folded carefully, some wrapped in oilcloth. Silks, mostly. Blues and greens and violent oranges that practically glow. One is patterned with cranes in mid-flight. Another has a stitched gold sun with a face that winks. The strange thing is how well they're preserved. These weren't dragged around for show. They were cared for, respected. You imagine some sailor, tough as nails, folding these delicately each night, like a devoted grandmother, maybe even ironing them with a hot brick wrapped in cloth. Yes, really, pirates had tricks. You stand again, stretching your arms above your head. The ceiling is low, but you can just make out more fabric strung between beams. Makeshift banners, probably once decorative table runners, now claimed as pirate heraldry. One bears a rooster, another a skull that's smiling with gold teeth. It's almost festive, like a cursed Renaissance fair. Then, just beneath your feet, you hear a soft thud, a sound of something shifting below deck. Maybe cargo, maybe rats, maybe a restless crew member checking to make sure the captain hasn't disappeared with all the brandy again. You freeze, then exhale slowly. Still safe. For now. As your eyes adjust further to the amber light, you notice smaller flourishes. Embroidered trim along the bunk cushions. A woven fan mounted on the wall, clearly from Southeast Asia. Even the pull cord on the lantern is adorned with beads. Some glass, some bone, one unmistakably carved to look like a tiny shark. And in this moment, you realize, this place isn't just a pirate's cabin, it's a scrapbook. A museum of everywhere this crew has ever been. Every ship they've ever raided. Every person they've taken something from. No surprise then that these rooms were often looted again when pirates were captured. Navy officers walked off not just with prisoners, but with Persian rugs, Spanish silk, and the occasional stuffed monkey. So as you settle down again on the fancy rug that's been trod by 100 bare feet, maybe try not to think about who died for it. Or do. Either way, it's a soft place to rest. The cabin creaks softly as the ship rises and dips with the swells outside. And you take another step deeper into the space, this time turning your attention to the bones of the room, the walls, the structure, the frame holding all this pirate splendor together. At first glance, it's rough, crude even. Bare wooden planks, thick beams, nails hammered in with more force than finesse. But then you notice the details, the little things that weren't just built. They were made to impress, or maybe to intimidate. On the far wall, next to the door, a set of dark panels catches your eye. They're carved with an intricate swirling pattern, ropes twisting into anchors, krakens curling around compass roses. and a ship with sails that look like they're ready to billow out of the wood itself. You run your fingers along the edge. Smooth, varnished, polished with care. Probably stolen from some merchant's private quarters and cut to fit this irregular wall. Pirates didn't do symmetry. They did statement. There's a myth that all pirate ships were just floating barrels of chaos, slapped together and barely seaworthy. But the truth is, many were retrofitted from captured ships, and captains often invested in carpenters and craftsmen to improve their living quarters. Not for comfort alone, but for pride and power. A well-appointed cabin said, "This is mine. I took it, and I made it better." Historians still argue whether pirates had permanent crews of shipwrights, or if they just picked up handy carpenters along the way. But one thing's certain, the work inside these cabins was often surprisingly skilled, and more than a few pirates had previously served in merchant navies or dockyards. They knew what fine craftsmanship looked like. They just preferred it stolen. The wood itself is a patchwork. You can see at least 3 types. Weathered pine in the ceiling beams, dark oak along the floor, and a few panels that might be teak. Or maybe just stained to look like teak. Pirates weren't above a little fakery. If it looked rich, it was rich. Even if it wasn't. Quirky tidbit time. Some pirate captains reportedly had false panels installed not just to hide treasure, but to make their cabins seem bigger than they were, creating a sense of space in a place where space was always in short supply. One popular trick? Angled mirrors placed in corners to reflect lantern light and make a narrow cabin feel wider. Sound familiar? Interior design, pirate edition. You lean closer to a carved strip running under the porthole. It's a trim piece. Decorative, maybe, except it slides. With a gentle tug, it reveals a hidden drawer. Empty now, but your imagination fills it with old maps, rings, love letters in languages you can't read. Or something less poetic, like spare musket balls or salted cod. And then there's the ceiling. Look up. Not just planks and nails. Someone has taken a hot poker, or maybe a very precise knife, and scratched a design into the beam above the bunk. It's a series of concentric circles, like a compass rose, surrounded by tiny initials. Names? Victories? Wards against storms? No one really knows. But the carving is delicate, careful, personal. You walk around the room again, slower this time, looking for the line between function and flourish. There's a wooden frame around the lantern, simple yet curved like a cathedral arch. The door has a latch carved to look like a serpent's head, with one glass eye missing. Even the nails holding the floorboards down have been hammered in with a kind of rhythm. Some of them even have little indentations filled with pitch to keep water out. It's a contradiction, this space. Refined, but rough. And that's exactly the point. This wasn't a noble's drawing room or a peasant's hut. It was both, and neither. It was something entirely new, pirate class. You find yourself standing near the corner where the wall bends slightly. Bad craftsmanship, you think at first. But then you realize it's a clever trick. The bend creates a little nook, just big enough for a writing shelf and a stool. The shelf folds down, secured by a brass hinge that, if your eyes aren't deceiving you, has a tiny fleur-de-lis stamped into it. French. Probably expensive, definitely not legal. And it's here, sitting on that wobbly little stool in the warm shadow of a gold-stitched curtain, that you start to get it. The cabin isn't just a room, it's a declaration, a theatre, a place where one man, facing death on every tide, built something permanent in a world of collapse. There's even a bit of humor to it, carved into one of the planks. Very faint, almost rubbed out. You can make out a phrase: "Better a cabin with splinters than a palace in chains." Classic pirate wisdom, and possibly something you'd find on a pillow at a very niche home, goods store. You reach out, touching the wall again, this time with more reverence. It's not perfect. It's scarred and uneven, but it's also alive with effort, with stories, with choices. And for all the stolen riches and heavy gold trim, is these walls, the patched, panelled, stubborn walls, that truly hold the heart of the pirate's world. You pause at the doorway of the captain's quarters, where the last slant of sunlight fades into amber. That's when you notice something you hadn't seen before. Not in the carpets, not the carved wood, not the velvet curtains. The walls, yes. The fabrics, sure. But this time, it's the light itself. The lantern hanging from the center beam isn't just any old oil lamp. It's housed in etched glass, green tinted, shaped like an old cathedral window, and etched with a pattern of tiny waves. When lit, it casts a watery ripple across the room, making every polished surface shimmer like the ocean floor. You tilt your head, watching the shadows dance over a silver-handled cutlass hung above the desk. It's deliberate. It has to be. Light used not just to see, but to show. Even pirates, apparently, were into ambiance. The use of light inside a pirate cabin was both practical and psychological. Sea life meant shadows, deep, cloying darkness below decks, with only slivers of sun and moon. Lanterns were vital, but here, inside this carefully curated domain, they became tools of drama. There's a mirror hanging crooked on one wall, silver-backed, slightly cracked, rimmed in coral and what might be shark teeth. Charming, right? But the mirror doubles the glow of the lantern, reflecting light into corners that would otherwise be murky. Smart. Possibly stolen from a Spanish merchant who liked to check his wig. Now it's just part of the pirate aesthetic. Some cabins used colored glass, lanterns to set the mood. Blue to calm nerves, red to intimidate guests or intruders. And at least one journal from a captured pirate describes lanterns shielded with scraps of silk, so they'd cast a diffused glow instead of a harsh spotlight. Soft lighting, you murmur. The pirate's secret weapon. Historians still argue whether this level of attention to lighting was unique to flagship captains or common across many pirate vessels. One theory suggests it was a means of asserting control. Light, after all, draws attention. A glowing cabin in the heart of a dark ship was a symbol. A sun in miniature, with the captain at its center. You wander closer to the desk beneath the lantern. There's wax residue pooled on its surface, and a stubby candle rolled in black grit. You imagine long nights spent over charts and ledgers, the only light a flickering wick casting shadows over ambitious plans. Or maybe long monologues rehearsed in the mirror, cigar in hand, trying to strike the right balance between threatening and charismatic. One fringe tidbit worth mentioning. At least one recovered pirate journal describes lamps filled not with standard whale oil, but with perfumed mixtures. Orange peel, clove, sometimes crushed lavender, meant to cover the smell of wet wood and unwashed sailors. So yes, this particular pirate's cabin didn't just glow. It smelled vaguely like a luxury bakery. You glance up again at the ceiling beams, noting now how some of them have been scraped clean and varnished until they gleam. Not just preserved, showcased. It's almost as if someone were trying to bounce light around, turning even the lowliest support beam into a statement piece. You chuckle softly at the thought. Track lighting for corsairs, you whisper. The window, or porthole technically, isn't large, but it's framed with a glass insert that's surprisingly ornate. A pale blue hue, faint as morning mist. Likely lifted from a fancier ship and installed here to soften the midday glare. It's held in place by brass clamps shaped like dolphins. A bit much, even for a pirate. But here you are. You watch as the light from outside shifts slowly, dimming into the rich golds of twilight. The room responds as if it's alive. The green glass lantern now throws olive shadows. The velvet curtains bleed crimson. Everything turns warm, a kind of temporary sunset preserved in fabric and flickering oil. Then you spot something even stranger, hidden in plain sight. Mounted to one wall is a thick iron candelabrum, but instead of standard candles, it's been rigged with multiple tiny oil lamps, each with a colored globe over it. Red, yellow, green, and blue. You blink. Navigation colors, mood lighting, a pirate disco. No one's sure. Some think this kind of lighting was used as a signal system. When the captain didn't want to be disturbed, or was holding a secret meeting, he could simply flip the right flame. Red for stay out, green for come in, blue for bring rum. No written records confirm this system, of course, but the story persists. Probably because it's too perfect not to believe. One last detail. Beneath the desk, nestled next to an oilcloth-wrapped box, is a lantern with broken glass on one side. A spotlight, almost. You imagine it used for interrogations, or maybe just dramatic entrances. "Who dares knock on my door at this ungodly hour?" you mutter, striking your best pirate accent. Light in a pirate cabin wasn't just function. It was theatre. A way to extend personality, to influence mood, to keep the crew slightly off balance, or seduced. The same man who lit his cabin like a jewel box could order a mutiny snuffed out before breakfast. And that contrast, that was the point. You sit once more on the cushion near the bunk, watching the lantern's green glow ripple across the golden fabric of the curtains. It's calming, in a strange way. A softness amid the storm. You wonder how many sleepless nights ended here, soothed by colored shadows and the rhythm of the hull creaking against the sea. Because even pirates needed peace, even if it came filtered through stolen glass and lavender oil. The light now fades to a low ember behind you as your attention is drawn to the desk at the heart of the cabin. Thick-legged, uneven, scarred by knife, gouges and stained with ink. This is no polished governor's writing table, no merchant's gleaming bureau. It's a battlefield in wood. You run your hand across its surface and feel the ridges of years, of stress, of stories written under threat of cannon fire. The pirate captain's desk is less an object and more a command post. It is where plans are made, where alliances are broken, where tiny maps dictate enormous greed. You sit down gently, and as the chair gives a soft creak beneath you, you realize this isn't just decoration. It was used every day, probably every hour. To your left lies a long rolled scroll, tied with a piece of old sailcloth and sealed with a hardened blob of black wax. You resist the temptation to break it open. Instead, your eyes drift to the objects scattered across the desk's surface. A rusty compass, missing its needle, but still beautifully inlaid with a sunburst of brass. A crumpled chart of the Caribbean, corner-singed with an X drawn. Not in red, but in elegant blue ink. Very dramatic. Historians still argue whether pirate maps were genuinely practical or mostly performative. props for a theatrical lifestyle that was part strategy, part legend. Some claim most pirates relied on stolen merchant charts and simple dead reckoning. Others point to surviving examples of hand-drawn island maps with poetic names like Widow's Bay and Gallows Tongue, clearly made with flair, if not precision. But no one denies the desk was the pirate's throne. From here, the captain ran a floating kingdom. He tallied loot shares, assigned punishments, negotiated prisoner trades, and maybe, just maybe, wrote letters to a sweetheart left behind. Or a rival, or a king. Next to the compass sits a peculiar little box, square, wooden, painted black. The lid is carved with a skull smoking a pipe. You lift it and find what looks like a collection of wax seals and stamping dies. Each one bears a different insignia. A scorpion, a snake coiled around a sword, a cat, of all things. Were these used to sign orders? Mark cargo? Or were they symbols of various aliases? Pirates loved pseudonyms, some out of necessity, others out of pure drama. Black Bart, Calico Jack. You know the type. Quirky tidbit time. There's a documented case of a pirate captain who insisted every piece of official paperwork, even orders to clean the deck, be sealed with a wax imprint of a monkey's paw. No one knows why. Maybe superstition, maybe just flair. Maybe a very particular grudge against monkeys. To the right of the desk, built into the wall, is a small cubby shelf holding thick ledgers. You pull one down and open to a random page. It's a mess. Columns of numbers, odd symbols, some words spelled phonetically or in 3 different languages. This is no clean bookkeeping. This is pirate math. Creative, dubious, surprisingly effective. There's a charm to it. 2 chests, rum, 9 men, 4 emeths, if rationed, scrawled next to a very hopeful smiley face. Pirates were, if nothing else, optimists when it came to alcohol. You note the way the desk legs are reinforced with iron brackets. Not decorative, functional. It had to survive storms, cannon shock, and the occasional sword-thumping tantrum. And look, near the bottom, a narrow drawer disguised by a sliver of wood grain. You slide it open and find 3 things. An ivory tooth, a crumbling scrap of parchment with lyrics to a sea shanty, and a broken quill. None of it valuable, all of it irreplaceable. On the back of the desk is a leather pouch nailed to the wood, rough, black, frayed at the edges. You reach inside and pull out a glass lens. A monocle, a spyglass fragment. You hold it up to your eye, peer through it, and nearly fall out of the chair as the scratched glass magnifies your own reflection like a funhouse mirror. Not very helpful for reading maps, but perhaps once part of a larger tool, a sextant maybe, or something more theatrical. Pirates loved their flair after all. You push the drawer shut and sit still for a moment, listening to the creaks of the ship around you. You imagine a pirate captain here, elbows on the desk, head bowed, fingers stained with ink and rum. Maybe he's calculating shares. Maybe he's scribbling a letter to his past self. Don't do that thing in Tortuga. Maybe he's composing his own legend, one tall tale at a time. This desk isn't just furniture. It's proof that piracy, for all its fire and frenzy, had a method, a ritual, a quiet place from which chaos was shaped into profit. One final glance, and you notice something etched into the desk's underside. So faint, you wouldn't have seen it if the lantern hadn't flickered just right. You lean down, squint, and trace it with your fingertip. 3 simple words. We draw first. No flourish, no signature. Just an ethos, scratched in fury, or calm. You can't tell, but it lingers. As you rise, you feel the lingering weight of the captain's presence, equal parts menace and melancholy. The desk remains silent but loud, cluttered but deliberate, as much a portrait of a pirate's mind as any flag ever flown from the mast. You stretch your legs and take a few slow steps to the corner of the cabin where a large trunk sits, half shoved beneath the bunk. It's battered and iron-banded, the wood swollen from years of humidity, its lock rusted shut like it's given up caring who tries to break in. But someone has tried. You notice the faint dent of a blade near the hasp. Probably not a thief, but a frustrated captain trying to open it with his cutlass. Pirates were many things. Gentle wasn't usually one of them. Still, the trunk is a kind of time capsule. You pry it open, not without effort, and the hinges groan like a waking kraken. Inside, fabric, leather, paper, bone. It's chaos in there. But the stylish kind, the kind that tells you this wasn't just storage. This was costume, persona, mood board. Right on top you find a coat. Heavy, dark red velvet, its edges trimmed with gold thread so fine it must have once belonged to a noble. Or someone playing one. The shoulders are padded, the cuffs absurdly wide. And the lining, peacock feather print. You hold it up to your shoulders and do a little spin, whispering, "Captain of Excess reporting for duty." This coat isn't just a garment. It's a statement. Pirates weren't all rags and rough cloth. Many had a taste for the dramatic, especially captains who needed to impress or terrify their crews and enemies alike. The coat was both armor and advertisement, a captain's version of a crown. Historians still argue whether these lavish pieces were worn often or saved for special moments. Parleys, trials, surprise ship raids. Some sources suggest pirates had event wardrobes, while others believe they wore their finest all the time, partly for intimidation and partly because the ship's humidity ruined everything anyway. You dig deeper and find a pair of boots, knee-high leather, cracked but still handsome. One is stuffed with paper, the other with what appears to be lavender sprigs. You chickle. Who says pirates don't do aromatherapy? The soles are iron-studded for grip, and the heels are just tall enough to say, "Yes, I want to look taller." Next comes a small pouch of jewelry, rings with stones you're pretty sure are fake, a string of pearls that might be real but probably isn't, and a brooch shaped like a dagger piercing a rose. Dramatic? Certainly. But here's the fringe tidbit. Some pirates wore jewelry as a kind of currency, sewn directly into their clothes or worn constantly because it was safer than hiding it. If you died, your shipmates knew what to strip from your body to cover your share. Under the jewelry, you find a mask, a half-face piece, like something from a Venetian masquerade, black and silver, lined in dark velvet. What was it for? No one knows. Some pirates used masks to disguise themselves during ship raids. Others may have worn them for sheer theatrical flair. And at least one legend claims a Caribbean captain held mass trials for disloyal crew. Justice meets performance art. At the bottom of the trunk lies a bundle of fabric wrapped in oilcloth. You open it carefully. Inside, scraps of flags. Not just one. Pieces from multiple, black and red cloth, stitched with bones, hearts, and hourglasses. You run your fingers over the threadwork and wonder if these were prototypes, backups, or mementos from battles past. Some pirates famously personalized their flags. The standard skull and crossbones, sure, but also weeping skeletons, devils drinking from goblets, even a man dancing with death. These symbols weren't just for show. They were psychological warfare. The right flag raised at the right time could make a merchant ship surrender before a single cannon fired. One particular piece in the bundle catches your eye. A stitched hourglass, sand half drained, flanked by wings. "Time's up," it whispers. You smile. Pirates did love a message. Next to the flags lies a journal, not leather-bound, but wrapped in sharkskin. Its cover is etched with what looks like the captain's initials, J.M. You open it to a random page. It's written in several languages. Some Spanish, some French, some what you think is just very bad spelling. But the sketches? Oh, those are clear. Drawings of cabin layouts, cargo markings, even one labelled ideal torture stool, folding. Lovely. The journal is more than logbook. It's an idea, vault. A pirate Pinterest, if you will. There's a whole page devoted to chair designs. Another lists dramatic sayings, possibly for use in battle. Time to bleed. Make it swift. Tell Davy I'm coming for brunch. You raise an eyebrow. Dramatic and punctual, impressive. You pause at the last page. It's blank, except for a single ink blot and a faint fingerprint. The journal was still being used, or maybe waiting for something final to be written. The trunk lid creaks again as you close it. You sit back on the floor, trunk beside you, and breathe in the scent it left behind. Leather, dust, salt, and the faintest whiff of citrus. Pirates may have been savage, but they weren't scentless. It's funny how much of their legacy is rooted in violence, yet their cabins, like this trunk, reveal a thirst for style, for personality, for memory. This wasn't just a place to sleep. It was a stage. Every piece of clothing, every flag, every shiny bauble said something. You lean your head against the bunk and imagine the captain sitting here, boots off, coat flung over the chair, mask hanging from the desk lamp, maybe humming some old sea tune, maybe carving initials into the trunk lid just to pass the time. Because yes, pirates raided, pillaged, plundered, but they also collected, designed, curated. They made spaces their own, not just out of vanity, but maybe out of the simple need for something constant in a life full of storm and smoke. You rise from the trunk, knees creaking slightly, not unlike the ship, and your hand drifts across a hanging curtain of heavy sailcloth. Behind it is a cramped alcove, half hidden, where the walls are etched in strange patterns. A closer look reveals it isn't random. It's deliberate. A makeshift gallery of symbols, names, tally marks, and even full-blown sketches carved into the wood, one shallow line at a time. The pirate version of a diary, but for walls. This is the captain's inner sanctum. The space where he or she, let's not forget Anne Bonny and Mary Red, retreated not for rest, but for reflection, and apparently for art. Because as your eyes adjust, you realize this isn't just graffiti, it's mural work. And some of it is surprisingly good. A mermaid with a smirk and daggered teeth stretches across one board, flanked by dancing skeletons. Above her, a quote scratched in childlike lettering. All treasure is cursed, so enjoy the spending. You're not sure if that's philosophy or just budgeting advice. This little corner proves that pirates weren't just brutes. They were thinkers, dreamers, some even artists. Historians still argue whether these cabin carvings served magical purposes, protection charms, sailor superstitions, or were simply creative ventings in cramped quarters. Whatever the truth, these weren't mindless etchings. They were meaningful, often funny, occasionally unsettling. You spot a crude calendar scratched onto the wall. It tracks 27 days, then abruptly stops. Underneath, the phrase, "He never came back." No signature, no name. You shiver just slightly, even in the imagined safety of your mind. And there, right above eye level, is a small hand-carved portrait. Just a face, etched with care, high cheekbones, a crooked smile, and a single tear. Below it, always watching, never speaking. You'd be forgiven for glancing over your shoulder just then. Pirates may not have been religious in the traditional sense, but they were deeply superstitious. Spirits, omens, tokens, all of it mattered. You reach up and brush your fingers along one series of carvings. Simple knots, the kind you'd find in sailor lore, a square knot, a Turk's head, a hangman's loop. But here's the twist. Next to each knot is a tiny name and date. You realize it's a memorial for crew lost. A wall of knots, each one tied in wood instead of rope, each one a farewell. Next to the knot wall is a little shelf barely large enough to hold a few trinkets. On it rests a small wooden figure, a crudely carved sea turtle with a gold coin jammed in its shell. Pirates believed turtles brought luck, especially when navigating treacherous shallows. The coin? That's just good business. Then your eyes catch something strange. Tucked into the corner behind the shelf is a small glass bottle sealed with red wax. Inside is a folded piece of parchment. Against your better judgment, or because you're narrating this whole thing, you pull it free and crack the seal. The note reads, "Don't trust the cook. He's better with blades than broth." You laugh softly. Pirate humor. But also, maybe not a joke. This alcove is full of secrets. Along the lower wall, you find a hidden compartment behind a loose board. Inside, a bundle of hair tied with a blue ribbon, a single gold tooth, and a dried flower pressed between 2 pages torn from a Bible. It's part creepy, part tender. Like so many pirate artifacts, it blurs the line between sentimental and survivalist. There's even a small mirror hanging askew, its silver backing chipped. You lean in and see yourself distorted by age and warping. You imagine the captain doing the same, adjusting a hat, checking for blood, or simply trying to remember who he used to be. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some pirates use small mirrors not for grooming, but for signaling across ship decks, flashing sunlight as silent code. A practical Morse system, long before wires were a thing. Of course, some also just enjoyed watching their mustaches catch the light. The air here is different, heavier, more intimate. It smells like oil, salt, and something faintly metallic. Blood? Ink? Rum? Hard to say. Everything in this space feels personal. Not just lived in, but loved. Or at least clung to. And there, scribbled low on the wall, where the candlelight barely reaches, is the final message. If you're reading this, you're me. A joke? A warning? A truth too complex to decode? Doesn't matter. You nod, quietly acknowledging the stranger who once crouched here, carving their legacy one scratch at a time. You sit on the floor, leaning back against the wall, and let your eyes wander over the alcove one last time. It's not flashy like the desk or theatrical like the wardrobe, but it's real. This is where the pirate captain came to be human, to wrestle ghosts, to sketch bad jokes and good memories into the bones of the ship. This is the soul of the cabin, tucked away, unlit, unspoken. It doesn't ask to be found, but it stays just in case someone does. You pull yourself out of the alcove slowly, legs tingling as blood returns, and find your hand brushing against a curious shape hanging on the wall beside you. It's a lamp, but not the kind you'd find in a house or even most ships. It's cobbled together from a rusted whale oil canister, a bent silver spoon for a reflector, and a wick that smells suspiciously like burnt sugar and fat. Handmade, scrappy, functional. It glows like a firefly with arthritis. But in this dark, it might as well be the sun. Lighting, you realize, is a key part of a pirate captain's cabin. Without it, even the most dramatic decor would be reduced to shadows and toe-stubbing hazards. You swing the lamp slightly, and it casts warped silhouettes on the walls. Dagger, rope coil, what may or may not be a taxidermied parrot. Pirates got creative with light sources. Candles were precious, and wax didn't always travel well in the tropics. Oil lamps were more reliable, but expensive. Some captains allegedly made their own fuel from leftover seal fat, citrus oil, or, brace yourself, fermented fish parts. A fragrant glow indeed. Historians still argue whether certain pirate crews used animal fat lamps for ritual purposes, or just because they couldn't afford better. Either way, it's a bold choice in an already sweaty wooden box at sea. The lamp reveals a cluster of bottles nestled into a wall rack. They're of every shape and size, long necks, squat bases, green, brown, and clear. Some are sealed with cork, others with wax. One still has a tattered label that reads, rather grandly, "Elixir for ailments of both flesh and fortune." You pick it up. It smells like spiced vinegar and regret. The bottles are more than decoration. Pirates treated their cabins like apothecaries. A good captain knew how to fight off infection, clean a wound, or make a rum-soaked poultice for a sore tooth. These weren't just rum reserves, though plenty of that too. Some held concoctions for seasickness, others for sleep. One bottle contains dried orange peel, cloves, and a suspiciously white powder. Sugar? Salt? Opium? Let's pretend we didn't open that one. Among the bottles, you find a ceramic jar, its lid fused shut by time. You give it a gentle shake. It rattles. Inside could be anything. Teeth, buttons, coins, dried herbs, or the powdered remains of a beloved pet iguana. The pirate world did not come with labels or trigger warnings. You sit again, bottle in hand, and notice a curious object tucked behind the cabinet. A painted folding fan. Yes, a fan. Delicate, with ivory ribs and faded florals. Incongruous, sure, but it hints at something deeper. Pirates traveled the world. They picked up not just goods, but culture. Japanese fans, Spanish combs, Moorish tiles, all filtered into the melting pot of cabin decor. One captain allegedly decorated his cabin with Chinese silk umbrellas, despite having no use for shed in the Caribbean. Another lined his shelves with tiny Russian dolls, each one carved to resemble a crew member. Were these trophies or tokens? Historians still debate whether such trinkets signaled status, sentimentality, or just really good plundering luck. Beside the fan, your fingers find a wooden box the size of a book. You open it slowly. Inside, dice, cards, tiny carved figurines, a makeshift gaming kit. The cards are faded but detailed. One joker shows a skeleton dancing with a barrel of rum. Another suit features crossed sabers and hourglasses instead of hearts and diamonds. Pirates love their games. For coin, for time killing, or sometimes just to settle grudges, quietly, with cards. Before knives came out, you chuckle softly, running your thumb across one carved piece. A tiny pig in a tricorn hat, a mascot, a lucky charm, maybe just a result of too much rum and a sharp knife. Quirky detail. Some pirate captains hosted quiet hours, when no shouting or violence was allowed. Only games and storytelling, a strange form of order in the floating chaos. Then comes the scent, faint but unmistakable, tobacco. You follow it and discover a pouch tucked into a corner. along with a small pipe made of carved bone and brass. It's intricate, and the bowl is charred, clearly loved. Maybe it wasn't just for tobacco. Maybe something stronger. A calming ritual at the end of a day spent dodging cannonballs and navigating mutiny. In one final corner, just above the bunk, is something that catches your breath. A sky chart. Not a fancy one, not an astronomer's tool. Just a handmade constellation map painted directly onto the cabin wall. It glows faintly. You realize some kind of phosphorescent powder was mixed into the paint. It catches the lamplight, and faint stars flicker to life. This chart isn't accurate, at least not by modern standards. The stars are grouped oddly, some with names like Devil's Eel, St. Morgan's Teeth, and the Drinker's Ladder. But to that captain, it made perfect sense. A way to chart position, or maybe just a way to feel grounded in the middle of oceanic nothing. You stretch out on the bunk, letting your gaze settle on the glimmering stars above. It's a surprisingly soothing view. You imagine the captain lying right here, pipe in hand, lamp low, listening to the creak of the mast, watching this hand-painted sky sway with the motion of the sea. Maybe he was plotting his next move. Maybe he was mourning a lost friend. Or maybe, just maybe, he was doing what you're doing, taking a breath in a world that never slowed down. And as you close your eyes for a moment, beneath this pirate planetarium, one thing is certain. This cabin wasn't just functional, it was intentional. Every light, scent, and star had its place. Not because it was beautiful, though it was, but because it made survival a little more bearable, a little more human. Still reclined under the pirate's personal sky, you shift slightly and notice the softest creak beneath your shoulder. You sit up, lift the edge of the bedding, and discover a trapdoor. No hinges, no handle, just a panel cleverly cut into the cabin floor. You pry it open with a knife from the gaming box, and beneath is a shallow hollow, lined with felt, cool to the touch. Inside, a velvet pouch tied with red thread, a rolled canvas map, and a leather-bound book worn soft by salt and time. You can't help yourself. You open the pouch first. Coins, but not the kind jingling in every pirate's pocket. These are strange. One bears a lion with 2 tails. Another shows a crescent moon above what looks like a pine cone. These aren't doubloons or pieces of 8. They're tokens, perhaps from secret ports or trades gone hush-hush. One is square, one's wooden, and one is clearly a button. Someone's pretending is currency. That's pirate charm for you. You turn to the canvas map. It unrolls with a whispery crackle. It's not a sea chart, but a layout of this very ship. Decks, storage, crew bunks, even cannon placements. But someone, presumably the captain, has annotated it. In red ink, symbols mark certain barrels, X's on planks that creak, a small skull on one stairwell. Beside the rudder shaft, the word never. What does that mean? Historians still argue whether some pirate captains booby-trapped their own ships against mutiny, or simply marked danger spots for survival. It's a diary in ink and wood. You trace the notes and start piecing together patterns. Red dots near the captain's bunk. 3 in a triangle, then one scrawled phrase. Never twice in the same spot. A code, or just insomnia scribbles. With pirates, it's always hard to tell. Finally, the leather-bound book. It opens stiffly, pages bloated from moisture. Inside, drawings, tally marks, sentences half scratched out. You're staring at a journal, a captain's personal log. Not the kind read aloud to a crew, but the private stuff, the things that made them human. You read, Day 4, sea like glass, Feels wrong. No birds. Men mutter. Day 13. He stole sugar again. I let it pass. He's got 3 teeth and a dying cough. Day 19. Saw a girl on the waves. Not real. Not real. And in smaller writing, across the page edge, if I die, burn this book. Or publish it and say I was taller. The entries are fragmented. One describes a storm so violent, it screamed louder than any man ever did. Another details a dream of drowning in a tavern while coins rained from the ceiling. A pirate's brain, it seems, was a very strange place. Among the scribbles, you find a pressed leaf, perfectly intact, deep green with jagged edges, a memento from some port, maybe a jungle haven, maybe just a drink stop with foliage. But it was saved, pressed like something sacred. A reminder, perhaps, that land still exists. There's a drawing too, just one. A face, inked with tender strokes. Wide eyes, strong brow, a scar down the chin. No name, but underneath, a caption. Saw them once. Remember every day. A love? A ghost? Or both? This little hidden cache tells you more about the captain than all the flashy furnishings above deck. This was the core. The private thoughts that never made it to the table or the crew's ears. Pirates weren't known for vulnerability, but scratch beneath the surface and you'll find it, raw and unfiltered. The page corners are curled. A few are stuck together with what might be rum or maybe tears. Honestly, those two aren't mutually exclusive in this world. And then there's the back cover, scratched into the leather with what must have been a blade. Everything I own is in this room. Burn it if I don't come back. You glance around, half expecting to find scorch marks from a failed attempt. But no. Everything remains, untouched, but not unloved. Someone chose not to burn it. Maybe out of loyalty, maybe out of laziness, or maybe because deep down they hoped someone like you would find it one day. You place the book back gently, as though closing a casket. You stand, stretch, and dust off your knees. The trapdoor clicks softly back into place. From above, you'd never guess it was there. But now you know. A secret under the bed. A story under the stories. It's fitting, really. A pirate captain might bark orders and draw blades. But down deep, there was always more. Regrets, memories, maybe even hope. And suddenly you realize how many secrets this room must hold that you still haven't found. Loose panels, folded letters, messages scratched under furniture. You half laugh at the absurdity. This room, floating on a ship likely to sink at any time, was treated like a sanctuary. Quirky fact of the night. Some pirates believed that a room's last breath lingered even after everyone left. That the cabin remembered who slept there, what was whispered and what was hidden. So they left tokens for the next occupant. Not for ghosts, but for fellow ghosts in the making. You reach out and place your hand gently on the wall beside the bed, just for a second, as if to say, I see you. And maybe, just maybe, it sees you back. You rise from the bed with the lingering echo of ink-stained secrets still playing across your mind. The captain's log was personal, yes, but you're beginning to realize this entire cabin was a kind of autobiography. Every object, every tucked-away scrap of treasure or trash told part of a story. And now your eyes settle on the walls themselves. Not the decorations, the actual boards. They're carved. Faintly at first, barely perceptible. But once you spot one, your eyes adjust and more emerge from the grain like ghostly graffiti. A mermaid here, a noose there, a cluster of initials. You run your fingers across a particularly deep groove and feel the edges catch your skin. It's the name of a ship, Valkyrie's Wager, etched at a slight slant, as if the carver had done it in a hurry, or in secret. Pirates, it turns out, were chronic carvers. When paper was scarce and tattoos were permanent, the wooden walls became the canvas of choice. Historians still debate whether some of these carvings were part of coded communication between officers, or just board doodles made during storm delays. Some cabins were found with elaborate compass roses scratched into floorboards. Others bore verses, some poetic, some vulgar. There's a bird here, some kind of stylized falcon, wings fanned. Beside it, a tally mark set, 5, 10, 15. Victories, days at sea, enemies slain in bare-knuckle combat with a spoon. You're not sure, but the bird is beautiful, despite the primitive tools likely used to create it. And you know it mattered to someone. Above the bird, a faint inscription, so weathered you need to lean in close. Beauty is what you can carry through a storm. Poetic, a little dramatic, very pirate. Near the door, more carvings cluster like barnacles. A row of tiny ships, each with a different flag. A fish with a human eye. A crude compass pointing distinctly not north. And then, something curious. A small grid pattern, faint numbers along the edge. A chessboard. You crouch, inspecting further, and find 2 tiny pegs inserted into holes. Could this wall double as a game board? It seems likely. Pirates loved repurposing every surface. A table could be a map. A barrel lid might serve as a drum. And a wall could hold a silent tournament during long becalmed days when even seagulls seem bored. You step back, tilting your head to take in the full pattern of the carvings. They're chaotic, but not random. They cluster in zones. Portside with abstract designs, starboard near the bed with symbols, and around the desk, more words. Almost like separate voices. A silent crew, each adding their own mark to this floating memoir. One panel catches your eye. It's different. The grain is wrong. Too smooth. Newer than the rest. You press gently, and it shifts. Hidden door? Secret compartment? Alas, no. It swings open with a reluctant creak, revealing something stranger than treasure. A mirror, cracked down the center. Rimmed in what might be gold leaf, though it's flaking badly. You peer in, and for a moment, the low lamp light and your sleepy eyes make your reflection waver. You almost expect someone else's face to blink back at you. Maybe the captain's, maybe yours. 20 years from now, after a life at sea and 1,000 sleepless nights. Pirates didn't often keep mirrors. Superstition warned against them, seeing death or inviting spirits. But some did, in defiance or desperation, to practice speeches, to check their wounds, or perhaps just to remember they were real, etched into the glass at the very top. If I forget who I am, remind me. It's upside down, which might explain a lot. The mirror cabinet also holds a few tucked-in notes. Not letters, not parchment, scraps. One is torn from a book and reads simply, "Beware the man who laughs when there is no joke." Another, "Ask her what the bird said. She remembers." And the third, in a different hand altogether, "You talk in your sleep, loudly." There's something intimate about these fragments. They don't make sense out of context, but you feel their weight. A little like overhearing part of a conversation in the dark. A secret not meant for you, but impossible to unhear. You slide the mirror shut, and your eyes land on a drawer near the writing desk, now slightly ajar. Inside, fabric. Lots of it. Scarves, kerchiefs, scraps of silk and lace. Some with embroidered initials, some stained with old wine or blood, or possibly both. One particularly fine piece is bright crimson with gold thread and tiny pearls sewn in a corner. Definitely not standard issue. Pirate captains were collectors of cloth, you realize. Not just for fashion, but for history. These weren't just decorative. They told stories. One might come from a stolen wedding dress, another from a naval officer's sash. There's even a whisper that one pirate wore a bishop's altar cloth as a cape, just to prove a point. Historians still argue whether pirates used these textiles as trophies, trade goods, or just because deep down they loved a bit of drama. Honestly, after seeing a pearl-studded pocket square next to a monkey skull and a chart drawn in blood ink, you suspect it was all three. You lift the crimson scrap, fold it gently, and place it back where it was. Not because you're tidy, but because suddenly it feels like you've touched something sacred. This isn't just a room. It's an archive of rebellion. Before you close the drawer, your fingers brush one final oddity. A tiny paper boat, folded with care. Its sail a sliver of parchment torn from a logbook. On it, 3 words in ink. We keep going. Simple, defiant, somehow perfect. You ease away from the desk with its folded memories and strange mirror truths, and your gaze drifts upward again. This time not toward the ceiling itself, but to the very corners where it meets the cabin's curved beams. There, nestled in the dim angles and dusty crooks, you start to notice something curious. Little figurines, tiny totems, objects small enough to escape casual notice, but weird enough to trigger all your late-night curiosity sensors. The first is a whittled owl, no bigger than your thumb, perched on a nail driven into the beam. Its eyes are huge, 2 dark pits that seem to follow you, silently judging. You can't tell what kind of wood it's made from, but it's worn smooth, as if handled obsessively over the years. And then another, a bent spoon, twisted into the shape of a fish. Beside it, an old tooth, maybe human, maybe not, tied to a string and hanging like a lopsided pendant. Welcome to the pirate's version of a mood board. These little collections weren't just for fun. Many pirates believed in the power of object magic. Talismans, tokens, items imbued with meaning or protection. Mainstream fact. Sailors of the 18th century were notoriously superstitious, carrying lucky dice, bones, or even cursed relics. In pirate culture, these evolved into a sort of informal religion. No priests, no temples, just wood, twine, and belief. You spot a tiny seashell with a hole drilled through it, dangling from a corner beam. Hanging beside it is a button, 4-holed, pearl-like, and completely out of place. And tucked in beside those? A drawing pinned with a rusty tack, a child's drawing, a ship with stick figure pirates. One has a sword, another has a cat. You stare at it longer than you mean to. Historians still debate whether pirate captains ever had contact with family once they turned outlaw, but some evidence, like this, suggests that yes, at least a few did. Maybe a daughter left this drawing on a dockside visit. Maybe it was sent in secret, smuggled into a port letter. Or maybe the captain drew it themselves, a fantasy scribble of the life they never got to live. You can't know. You can only feel. There's a small pouch nailed next to it, fabric stiff from salt. Inside, dried herbs, lavender, maybe rosemary. The scent's faded but not gone. Some pirates believe certain herbs kept nightmares at bay. Others just like the smell. One figurine is especially odd. A tiny carved coffin, complete with a lid that opens. Inside, a rolled up slip of paper with a single word. Later. Your pulse slows a little. What did they mean? Later what? Later who? This sort of tiny symbolic display wasn't unique to pirates, of course. Merchants and even whalers had their own odd traditions. But pirates had the freedom and the eccentricity to really lean in. You imagine the captain up late at night, fidgeting with twine, carving shapes into driftwood, whispering to objects no one else would understand. Tucked into a ceiling joist, half obscured by a shadow, you find a tiny ship carved from bone. Whalebone, perhaps, or something less poetic. Its sails are delicate, made of pressed parchment, and written faintly across the mainmast, "For when I'm not brave." Suddenly, the cabin's soft chaos, the mismatched fabrics, the oddly placed objects, the hidden pockets, takes on a new tone. It's not just style, it's a coping mechanism, a handmade environment designed to insulate one fragile person against a very unfragile world. The decorations aren't just pretty, they're armor. You turn and notice something else, sewn into the back of the door. A patchwork square of cloth, maybe 3 feet wide. It looks like a quilt, but messier. Patches overlap, colors clash. There's no symmetry, no clear theme. But as you lean in, you start to understand. Each patch is a memory. There's a strip of navy blue wool, frayed at one edge, likely a piece of naval uniform. A triangle of sailcloth, stained with tar. A thin square of bright yellow silk, embroidered with a crown. And stitched into one corner, a patch of plain brown linen with a single red X sewn in crooked thread. This was a memory wool, or maybe a mourning cloth. Some pirates kept these as physical diaries, a way to mark people lost, ships sunk, lovers left behind, victories earned. Every scrap had a story, and if you were brave or foolish, you could read it all. You lightly trace a strip of crimson velvet that's been stitched over with a zigzag in black thread. It looks like a wound. Maybe that's the point. At the center of the cloth, a square of parchment, stitched flat. Faded ink reads, "If I do not return, let this remember me." You step back and inhale slowly. The space feels even smaller now, closer, like the cabin itself is leaning in, listening to your breath, waiting to be understood. You reach for a hanging lantern and give it the smallest nudge. Its chain creaks, and shadows ripple across the room. Little silhouettes of owls and ships and broken mirrors dancing briefly across the walls. It's all so much more than a sleeping chamber. It's a living journal, a reliquary, a last will dressed in ribbons and rust. And then you notice a final item, tucked high in a rafter. So small and unassuming you'd have missed it without the flicker of lantern light. A dried flower. Pale white, slightly curled at the edges, tied at the stem with thread dyed blue, still clinging to its shape after who knows how many years of sea air. You wonder who gave it to the captain, or if the captain picked it themselves. Some moment of stolen solitude between cannon fire and betrayal. Quirky fact of the night? Some pirates believed a single flower brought aboard would bloom again if you ever made it home. Most didn't. But they brought one anyway. You step back toward the center of the room, now surrounded by ghosts made of wood and string and paper. And you begin to understand something unexpected. This pirate, for all their violence and swagger, spent their nights doing the same thing you do when you're restless and alone. They made a space that felt like them. The stillness of the cabin has changed. It's no longer just a quiet space. It's a presence filled with unspoken words and watchful memories. You exhale, slow and steady, and glance toward the floor. You hadn't really studied it. Not yet. The boards beneath your feet are worn smooth, but as you kneel to inspect them, new patterns emerge, soft beneath the dust. Shapes, lines, intentional wear. More stories, etched not with ink or blade this time, but with footsteps, with habit, with time. You slide your fingers across the grain, pausing where it dips. A circle, faint and scuffed, about 2 feet wide. A mark from a barrel, likely. Maybe it once held rum, or water, or something more arcane, powdered coral, perhaps, or fermented oranges turned into a crude seasickness tonic. Pirates were nothing if not inventive. Right beside the ring, you notice a line of indents, tiny ones, like the stubs left behind by nails pulled long ago. And then, right there in the center of the cabin, a shallow groove. It's not a construction flaw, it's deliberate. This floor had a pattern. Historians still argue whether some captains designed their floors to mimic star chart or compass roses. A few surviving cabins show designs that suggest ritual movement, paths walked in stress or superstition. This one seems almost circular. You follow the pattern and realize it's a spiral, starting from the center, curling outward, worn smooth by pacing, by boots and bare feet, walking that same slow path again and again. A meditation, a prayer, or a trap the captain set for their own mind. You stand and walk it, slowly. 1 loop, 2 loops. You don't know where it leads, but you feel your breath sinking with the rhythm. Left, forward, turn. It's oddly comforting, like following the tide. Then you see something gleaming, tucked between 2 floorboards, barely visible. You crouch again, easing it out. A coin. Not gold. Not even valuable, really. Just a copper token, worn thin, with one side scratched over. On the other, faint letters remain. Don't spend me. I'm your last. You smile. It's the kind of charm someone carries not for use, but for hope. Pirates were masters of talisman logic. 1 coin in your pocket meant you hadn't hit bottom. 1 spoon meant you'd eat again. 1 clean shirt meant maybe, just maybe, you'd make it to land respectable. Another floorboard creaks oddly beneath your foot. Not just the usual shipboard groan, it shifts. You freeze, lean back and test it with your palm. Yep, loose. You work your fingers into the edge, and the board lifts with a reluctant sigh of wood and salt. Beneath it, a small compartment, lined with cloth, a secret stash. There's a bundle wrapped in black fabric, tied with twine. You untie it carefully and reveal its contents. A locket, a quill, and an empty vial. Not just tossed down here, arranged. The locket is open, showing the faded miniature of a woman with sharp eyes and an unreadable smile. Her paint has flaked, but the presence is strong. The quill is fine, goose feather, cut clean, likely the captain's best. And the vial? Empty now, but faintly sweet. Maybe perfume, maybe poison. Who knows? You sit with the bundle in your lap and realize this was an emotional anchor. Not valuables, not maps or weapons, just touchstones. The things you hide from your crew, the things you whisper to when it's 4 a.m. and the waves won't let you sleep. Quirky detail. Some pirates had a ritual where they'd interview their own keepsakes once a month. They'd ask the locket if she still missed them, the coin if it thought they'd make it, the knife if it still wanted blood. Just pirate things. You wrap the bundle back up and return it to its place, replacing the board with care. And as you do, you notice more strange marks. Scorches this time near the fireplace. You hadn't given much thought to the hearth before. It's small, inset in the corner, mostly dark. But now you see it's not just a fireplace. It's a forge, or was. Soot lines the walls like fingerprints. Char marks fan out like sunbursts. And a pair of tongs rest just inside the hearth mouth, still blackened at the tips. The captain forged things here. Small things, probably. Hooks, rings, pins. Or perhaps charms. Pirates made their own jewelry sometimes. Rings from stolen silverware. Pendants from enemy bullets. You pick up a charred bit of scrap and realize it's shaped, deliberately, into a crescent. Moon-shaped? Maybe for luck. Maybe for worship. Some pirates believed in lunar tides guiding fate. Others just liked the aesthetic. Next to the forge, mounted on the wall, a row of tools, each hung with precision. Not just functional tools, beautiful ones. Polished handles, engraved grips. You spot a branding iron among them. Its shape is peculiar. Not a letter or number, but a symbol. A fish swallowing a star. What did it mean? A crew mark? A personal emblem? Historians still debate whether pirate brands were used as warning signs or just as highly specific inside jokes. Don't mess with us. We branded a goat once. You step back from the hearth, suddenly aware of how much heat and craft this room must have seen. The decorative choices, the bones, the silk, the glass, might grab your eye. But it's this space, this scorched corner and secret stash that held the captain's actual soul. And that spiral groove you followed, it ends here, right in front of the fire, as if no matter how far you walked, you'd always end up back at the heat, back at the source. Maybe that was the point. On a ship where nothing was certain, and no map was ever finished. The only compass was memory. You hear the soft creak of the hull settling. The candle flickers, casting the smallest shimmer on the coin in your palm. The last one? Yours now. You close your fingers around it and whisper, "Not yet." Your eyes adjust to the dim light again as you rise slowly, stepping back from the scorched hearth. The warm scent of old wood and faint ash clings to the air. And with every breath, the cabin feels more and more like a dream someone else had first. And you're just borrowing it for a while. Now, your attention drifts toward the walls. Not the strange ornaments, not the writing or the weapons, but the wood itself. Planks of oak and pine, some stripped clean by sand and sea. Others darkened by time, and carved into them, marks, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, not all in one place, scattered, some at eye level, some near the floor, some so faint you almost miss them. You crouch down, tracing your finger along one low etching, a tally mark, then another, then a cluster of 5, a dozen sets like that along a single plank, like a prisoner's calendar. Then, just above the bunk, one long slash, and beneath it, 2 circles. A tally? A code? Or maybe just a joke? Pirates had a grim sense of humor. One surviving ship record shows a tally chart beside the mess table labeled Barrels of Grog versus Reasons to Cry. Spoiler. Grog 1. Some of these markings look more intentional. One is shaped like a compass rose, each direction pointing to an initial. N, L, E, C, S, M, W. Nothing. You pause. Maybe initials. Maybe directions to something else. Buried loot. Forgotten debts. Historians still argue whether pirate cabins ever contained cipher maps. Secret engravings meant to lead future crews to hidden stashes. Most likely, though, these carvings served simpler purposes. Reminders. Warnings. Confessions. One symbol stands out. Near the cabin door, at eye level, deeply etched with confident strokes, a heart split in 2. And beneath it, a name. Tamsin. That's it. No date, no explanation. just a heart, cracked like the hull of a ship that took one cannonball too many. You lean back against the door and feel something bump against your shoulder. It's a small wooden panel, set slightly off from the rest of the wall. Not hidden exactly, but subtly out of line. You press it gently, and it shifts inward, then pops open. Behind it, a little shelf. Empty except for one item. A candle. Not just any candle, a black one, squat and wide with symbols etched down the side. You tilt it toward the light. The carvings aren't just decorative, they're runes. Maybe Norse. Maybe something older. Pirates borrowed from every culture they encountered. And some believe black candles could protect a cabin from mutiny or death at sea. Others claim they summoned dreams from the past. Either way, someone once lit this. More than once. The wax has melted and hardened again in soft layered spirals. You run your finger along its edge, and the scent, oddly, isn't smoke. It's cinnamon, warm and strange. You place it gently back on its shelf and close the panel. A soft creak behind you catches your attention, and you turn slowly. Nothing moves, but a gentle draft nudges a curtain aside, revealing something you missed before. A panel of stained glass. Just a small one, nestled high into the curve of the stern wall. But its colors flicker in the lantern light. Deep blue, amber, seafoam green. Not the kind of glass a pirate would find easily. This was taken, treasured, set into place with care. The design, a whale breaching, its tail high, a full moon behind it. Dramatic, gorgeous, totally impractical. And yet, it fits. This cabin was a space for stories, not strategy. For poetry, not power. Mainstream fact. Stained glass was a rare shipboard luxury, usually reserved for merchant officers or high-ranking naval captains. Pirates stealing and repurposing it. Very on brand. What's quirky is what's etched into the bottom of the glass. Not part of the design, just 3 words scratched by hand. Watch the moon. It's as if the captain left themselves a reminder. Not for navigation, but for sanity. You imagine them waking in a storm, glancing at the glass, breathing just a little easier. You lie down on the bunk, careful not to disturb the loose blankets or the folded shirt beside you. You want to see what the captain saw. And sure enough, the moonlight, dim though it is, finds its way through that glass. Blue, green, gold, splashing softly across the wooden floor in lazy ripples. And there it is, the cabin's final trick. Even in darkness it glows. You let your head sink into the pillow and trace the path of moonlight across the ceiling. You can almost hear it. Music. Not a melody exactly, but a rhythm. The low hum of waves outside. The creak of boards settling. The occasional sigh of wind slipping through a loose plank. It's a lullaby, stitched together from leftover sounds. And it occurs to you, this space was designed not just to protect, but to soothe, to slow the heart, to let a person rest in the few hours they weren't being chased or betrayed or bled out. Historians debate whether pirates truly sought peace or simply endured the noise until it stopped. But in this room, it's clear. Someone tried to build peace out of scraps. You reach up and touch the beam above you. Someone carved a line into it. Shaky, uneven, almost hidden. You squint and read it aloud, barely a whisper. If the sea takes me, let it be soft. That line stays with you. Hangs in the air like a lantern never fully extinguished. You close your eyes and imagine the captain doing the same, night after night. The whale glass glowing, the black candle flickering, the carved floor spiraling below. Not a throne, not a prison, just a place to sleep and dream. And maybe, if you're lucky, to forget. The stillness has grown dense now, like velvet draped over every beam and board in the cabin. Your breath is slow, your limbs heavy, and every sound is padded by that gentle hush that comes when night is truly settled. And yet, the story of this space isn't quite finished. Not yet. You sit up slowly, letting your hand slide across the blanket beside you, soft, woolen, worn thin in places. There's a stitch pattern near the hem, done by hand, small, deliberate X's in a faded maroon thread. Not decoration, but perhaps identification, maybe a signal to its owner that this was theirs, even when everything else was up for grabs. In pirate culture, cloth was currency. A decent blanket could mean status, comfort, or leverage in a barter gone south. Your fingers brush over something hard beneath the blanket, another tucked away detail. You lift it carefully, revealing a slim wooden box, about the size of a large book, smooth as riverstone. You pause, savoring the ritual of the unknown, then open the lid. Inside, paper. A dozen sheets, folded into thirds, letters. The top one is written in a hand both elegant and urgent. Ink blots suggest it was penned in haste. You scan the first lines. To whoever finds this, if anyone does. The sea is not kind, but she is honest. She gives what she takes, and takes what she gives. I leave these words not as a legacy, but as ballast. Let them weigh enough to matter. There's no signature, but the tone matches everything else in the cabin. Measured, poetic, half daring you to read further. The other letters are more personal. Notes to crew members. Messages never sent. One is addressed simply to the boy with the feather in his hat. Another ends with, "You lied, but I still kept your gift." You read one that's especially strange. It's not written in words, but in pictograms, almost like an illustrated story, carved out in sweeping pen strokes. A tree, a dagger, a star, a crow. Interpret it however you want. Pirates were fans of symbolism, and some captains developed their own icon languages, teaching only their closest allies to decode them. Historians still argue whether this was practical encryption, or just lonely people trying to invent something unbreakably personal. And right under the letters, a final item, thin, narrow, a flute, not made of wood. This one is metal, brass, dulled with time, still faintly gleaming. You lift it gently and raise it to your lips, though you don't blow. Instead, you run your fingers across the holes and imagine the notes. Sea shanties at dusk, lullabies when the gunpowder ran low, a quiet solo after lights out, played not for applause but for ghosts. You place it back and close the box. Now, finally, you let your gaze drift to the very last corner you haven't examined. Near the door, there's a chair, rocking gently, not from ghosts, not from mystery, but from the ship's eternal rhythm. And behind it, a mirror, oval, slightly cracked at the top left edge. The kind of mirror that would have been a prized possession. On pirate ships, mirrors were rare, breakable, impractical, and often stolen. But this one feels anchored. It doesn't just reflect. You suspect it remembers. You step closer, peering into it. For a moment, you don't see yourself. Not fully. What looks back is a version of you dressed in an old linen shirt, sun-leathered, with salt-damp hair and a tired gleam in your eye. The mirror is playing tricks, or maybe just showing you how it would feel to belong here. You lean in and notice something scratched faintly in the corner of the glass. It reads, "I remain, even if I leave." Was it a promise? A warning? Or just another reminder that even pirates, who swore loyalty to no flag and no god, still long to be remembered? Your reflection flickers. just the lantern's flame, catching on the curve of glass. But it startles you enough to step back. And when you do, your boot taps against something hard beneath the chair. You crouch and pull it free. A logbook. Now this is the treasure. Its cover is thick leather, worn to near suede. The clasp is broken, but it still holds tight. Inside, the pages are dense with writing, dates, positions, weather patterns, but also poetry, sketches, fragments of songs. Some entries are businesslike, but others are heartbreakingly intimate. They don't understand the stars like she did. Today I traded rum for an anchor charm, not for luck. For gravity, the crew sang for 2 hours tonight. I didn't join, I listened. And then, the entry that stops you cold, decorated my cabin today. Figured if I'm going to die here, I might as well do it surrounded by things I like. Hung up the bones, set out the glass, found that candle again, burned it to the wick. Smelled like cinnamon and ash, felt like someone watching me, but in a good way. You run your hand over the page. There's something beautiful about it. A pirate, adrift in chaos, choosing instead to make a sanctuary. Not of gold or violence, but of story, scent and moonlight. Quirky fact. Some captains were known to redecorate their cabins entirely between voyages, using whatever new materials they could steal or trade. Like traveling interior designers of doom. You close the logbook slowly, reverently. Every inch of this place now holds meaning. Every bone and book and bottle. Not junk, not clutter. A curated life stacked against the tide. You glance back at the mirror one last time. Your reflection looks tired. Not from fear or effort, but from feeling. This was never a pirate lair. It was a diary built from driftwood and dreams. And with that, your fingers trail along the doorframe. Ready now. Because even the best stories must return to silence. The moment lingers, suspended like sea spray in the breeze. One hand on the doorframe, one foot still inside the pirate's sanctuary. But you hesitate, because part of you doesn't want to leave. Not just the space, but the idea of it. A place made by outlaws who were supposed to crave only chaos, who lived in defiance and died without legacy. And yet, here it is, a room that feels like a whisper against all that noise. You step back in, because there's one last thing. Above the bunk, tucked where two beams meet at a low angle, is a small cloth-wrapped bundle. Easy to miss, easy to dismiss. But your eyes catch the fraying edge of red cotton, and your fingers can't help but pull it gently down. The cloth unwraps slowly. Inside, trinkets. Trinkets with stories only their owner could tell, and which you'll never fully know. A rusted key, no lock nearby to match. A bit of blue sea glass, smooth and crescent-shaped. A feather, black and streaked with white. Maybe gull, maybe raven. And one final object, a coin. Not gold or silver, just copper, but stamped with a face you don't recognize. Not a king, not a queen, a woman, smiling faintly, with a hand raised like she's waving goodbye. There are no dates, no country, and yet the coin feels warm from within, as though it remembers being carried close to a heart. Quirky fact. Some pirate captains minted their own symbolic coins, not for trade, but to represent loyalty, like a vow you could carry in your pocket. That's one theory, at least. Historians still argue whether such tokens were actually used, or if they were invented later to romanticize lives far messier than we want to admit. But standing here, in this cabin that has shared so many secrets, you suspect the truth may lie somewhere in between. You rewrap the cloth and return it to its perch. Let it keep its secrets. And then slowly, you lower yourself into the rocking chair, the one that's been swaying gently this whole time, like it knew you were coming. You let it cradle your weight. Let your arms go limp on the rests. Let your feet still. Let the room settle around you like a familiar tide. The moonlight through the stained glass is softer now, almost gone. The whale's tail is just a shadow, but it's still there, always will be. And so, finally, you close your eyes, just for a moment, and you imagine the cabin not as a display, not as a relic, but alive, with laughter echoing down the stairs, with boots thudding above deck, with wind in the sails and salt in the air, and someone calling out, "Trim the mizzen!" just to sound like they know what they're doing. The black candle flickers. The bones tinkle gently. The floor creaks in rhythm with the sea. And that mirror? It holds you now. It remembers. The sounds soften. The colors fade. Even your heartbeat starts to sink with the ship's lazy rocking back and forth, like being held in the arms of something ancient and kind. The chair beneath you doesn't creak anymore. It sways in silence, content to carry the weight of your sleepiness. Around you, every shadow stretches longer until the walls themselves seem to blur and melt into midnight blue. You let your breath grow long. Let your chest rise slow. Let your body grow heavy. Not with worry, but with rest. The kind of rest only a well-traveled soul can earn. The stained glass moon fades from view, but you know it's still there, glowing behind closed lids, just waiting for the next voyage. The bunk creaks softly once more, like a sigh, and the black candle's final curl of smoke weaves itself into your dream. And in that dream, you're not a visitor anymore. You're the captain now. This cabin is yours. Strange bones, feathered hats, cinnamon-scented candles and all. And every object, every carving, every hidden compartment, it all remembers your hands. The sea outside doesn't rage tonight. It whispers, tells you secrets in a language only your dreams understand. Something about stars, something about whales, something about never being truly lost, so long as someone remembers how it felt to be found. So you sleep, gently, completely, wrapped in a world that was never supposed to exist, but somehow did. Because even pirates deserve a place to rest their head. Even the wildest souls deserve soft lantern light and slow rocking chairs and cabins that tell stories long after the sails come down. And now so do you.